Welcome back to the Laura Coates Show. Here's your host, Laura Coates.
Hey, welcome back to the Laura Coates Show right here on SiriusXM POTUS. I'm glad you're all with us. If you ever miss any of our interviews, you can always go to the SiriusXM app and replay them there. Well, you won't miss this next one. We've got Congressman John B. Larson out of Connecticut's 1st Congressional District. He's a ranking member of the Ways and Means Social Security Subcommittee and lead sponsor of Social Security 2100, committed to protecting and strengthening Social Security by scrapping the cap for those earning more than $400,000 a year. That's in line with President Biden's promise to make the wealthy pay their fair share. Congressman John Larson joins us now. Good morning. How are you?
Great, Laura. How are you?
I'm doing great this Tuesday. You probably have your work cut out for you now that this is yet another week where a looming government shutdown exists. But thank you for taking the time this morning to join us, even with all the work ahead. Let me first begin by asking you about that, because as you know, last evening, apparently there had been some resolution of sorts. There had been some agreement reaching a deal on the Homeland Security funding late last night. What do you expect to happen next?
Well, it's a positive sign. I commend President Biden for staying at it. And I hope that Speaker Johnson this time is able to keep his word and make sure that we get a budget passed and keep government open and running this weekend, which is, as you indicated, the primary concern as well. But the signs are good, but it says, my grandfather Nolan would say, trust everyone, but cut the cards.
I like that. I think I'm going to use that. It's a much better way and more visual than, trust but verify. I love it. That's a funny way to think about it. We like your grandfather. Shout out to him. Let me ask you, though, on the timing of it, Congressman. I mean, look, you usually have 72 hours to read the funding legislation before a vote. But if you look at that deadline, that would be meaning that the DHS legislation was ready for review tomorrow. That would put a vote on the 6-bill package at some point on Saturday. And, I know that it was, daylight savings on Sunday, but that would still be after the shutdown deadline. How can it get done?
Well, they can always waive the rule, which I believe will be done. As important as having 72 hours to read over documents is, et cetera, it's not as though this is something new. We've been dealing with the budget now for several months, and as you know, avoided a couple of previous shutdowns, and let us hope that this can be avoided as well. But it will take Congress and cooperation to do that. But I do think it's a little different in that people are pretty much aware of what's at stake here, and nobody wants to see the government shut down, our men and women in the military not getting paid, and critical offices across the country that need to be open for the sake of the people we're sworn to serve.
That's an important point. Perhaps the rule will, in fact, be suspended for that very purpose. It is obviously an urgent matter. Let's talk about Social Security as well. This is something that you've been very passionate and outspoken about. And for so many people, you're hearing at one rally, there'll be cuts at another, not on my watch. But for those who are receiving and looking forward and ahead to Social Security, the idea of it being a political football is really disconcerting.
And especially so, and Laura, I know you know this, but imagine 10,000 baby boomers a day become eligible for Social Security. And Social Security has not been enhanced since 1971. Richard Nixon was the president of the United States at the time. When I say enhanced, meaning any of the programs haven't been improved, people used to say, well, in 83, wasn't Reagan and Bob Dole worked together with Chip? Yes, they did for the solvency of the program. And they did that by raising the age. But here's the kicker. And I know you know this, but I'll bet a lot of your viewers don't. That for every year you raise the age, that's a 7% cut in benefits. So usually our colleagues on the other side say, well, people are living longer, so we ought to raise the age. When you think about it, though, you say, well, if people are living longer, do they need to live on less? and especially a program that hasn't been enhanced. I think a lot has happened since 1971, especially economically, and I think the average citizen does as well. And it's long overdue that Congress step up to the plate and do something that only Congress can do. The president can't do this through executive order, and Congress needs to do something that would shock the American people. Vote.
I mean, that would be indeed shocking. And the idea that it would be is very telling about the state of affairs today. But specifically, I mean, is there the bipartisan support? Obviously, Social Security benefits are not just doled out to either Democrats or Republicans. And yet this issue too often falls along party lines.
Every Republican that I've talked to, and we've included more than 4 or 5 of their proposals in Social Security 2100, they all said the same thing. That they are very supportive of the bill, but, they have philosophical differences within their caucus about bringing it to the floor, but would acknowledge that on the floor facing imagine this, a vote, that they're not going to vote against their own interests. I give every member of Congress a card, Laura, and in it I tell them just how many Social Security recipients they have in their district. And here's the important fact, and how much it brings in monthly income to their district that goes to retirees, children, widows, spouses, and the disabled workers. That is the critical economic development program for every single congressional district. And again, imagine it hasn't been adjusted in more than 50 years.
So when you look ahead, I mean, there's always this looming threat I remember people describe, which is by the time, I'm 43 years old, by the time you are eligible for Social Security, there will be none left. That is a thought for many young people as well, younger than I, certainly, who are looking at this and wondering about how and whether to lean in for the support of legislation as it relates to Social Security. Clearly, we do have some aspects of our society that are selfless, but when people are supporting legislation, they often want to see that they themselves will gain and benefit from it. Do you have concerns about younger voters not being connected to this issue because of that threat?
Well, I think I have a concern that they're not connected because I don't think people are knowledgeable about Social Security and its benefits. And as we pointed out earlier, it's not just a pension. It's also spousal, dependent, and disability coverage as well, all of which will be critical. I'm from an insurance capital of the world. And guess what? I went to the Aetna school, and what they taught was there was 3 legs on the stool, the financial stool. And the most important leg on that stool was Social Security because it's never missed a payment. And you don't have to go back to 1929 or the Great Depression. We only have to go back to 2008, 2009 during the recession and see where people's 401ks became a 101k. And they lost that money. And Social Security during that time never missed a payment. The other daunting thing here, Laura, and for more than 40% of all Americans, Social Security is the only benefit they're going to have. Optimally, we want Social Security alongside of whatever pension programs or IRAs people can have. But the brilliance of Roosevelt was recognizing that we needed something that had the full faith and credit of the United States government and has never missed a payment.
It is particularly important, and it's especially given the discussions about spending and our national debt and what it says on the world stage and beyond. But it also, when you look at what the pay-fors would be and what the benefits are. I mean, Social Security 2100, I know you can look on your website as well for people to see and get more information. It's also ensuring millionaires and billionaires pay their fair share by applying FICA to earnings above $400,000, with those extra earnings counted towards benefits at a reduced rate. We often hear about the very wealthy paying their fair share as it relates to taxation. How about this issue as well?
Yeah, well, I think that that's critical. And again, kudos to President Biden here. I think that both in his State of the Union message and in his budget request, he outlines that proposal. And it should also be noted on two fronts here that number one, Social Security doesn't contribute a single penny to the national debt. It's an earned benefit paid for by the people that has its own trust fund. However, as you pointed out, and as President Biden, their Social Security is capped. Each year that cap grows, but people over 400,000 millionaires stop paying into the program in February. A person like Bill Gates, stopped paying in on January 2nd. And there are many millionaires and billionaires who don't pay anything at all because they're able to circumvent the law, the current law, because of a loophole in the FICA provisions. So we close that loophole and we say people should pay their fair. Why shouldn't a billionaire pay what a guy making 50, 75, $100,000 is making during the year? That's the right thing to do for a national program. We're all on the same team. We're all Americans. Let's join together. No one is going to be overburdened by paying what every American has to pay. And as I indicated, it doesn't create a single penny of debt. Social Security pays for itself. And as we indicated before, too, and I think this is an important point, Laura, is that for 40% of all Americans, considering that there are 70 million approximately Americans on Social Security, that's 28 million Americans. That's the only thing they have. And for women, for so many women, about 5 million Americans get below poverty level checks from Social Security because Congress has not done its job and made that adjustment. And most of them are women. Why? I think anyone can logically figure that out because they're care providers and gave birth and were at home with children, and also because they were paid less over a period of time. So part of what Social Security 2100 does is create a new floor for Social Security so that no one that works all their lives and pays into the system can get a below poverty level check from its government, while billionaires and millionaires are paying nothing into the system. I think that's a pretty fair thing to do. And I think most Americans, when they learn about the program, they go, yeah, that makes sense. And frankly, in polling data, most people even say, geez, if you charge me more because I know what these benefits are, I'm willing to pay that as well. But I think we have to make sure that people who haven't paid pay their fair share. And we're able to both extend the solvency of the program and also enhance benefits across the board.
Well, speaking of polling, I want to go to the polls just for a moment because, as you know, the ticket seems to be set with both Biden and Trump earning the requisite number of delegates to secure their own nomination, short of the confetti falling from the sky at the respective conventions. But there are other races happening all across this country, including the down ballot, including things like in Ohio, the Republican Senate primary today, which is going to be the year's first test of Donald Trump's clout in a pretty contested Senate race. When you look at the races besides the presidency, are you optimistic that Democrats can reclaim a majority in the House and retain one in the Senate?
Yes, I'm especially optimistic when we focus on the issues that are most relevant. I think Mr. Krugman of the New York Times wrote an excellent article just last week talking about Social Security and why it's so vitally important and why it needs to be funded, and the fact that Biden and the Democrats have a plan, Republicans have nothing. I think that will resonate. Rachel Maddow also on her show talking about women's reproductive rights and Social Security. Those two issues go hand in glove together as we go forward through this process. And they're the real kitchen table discussions that ultimately get people to the polls because they're votes in their own interests.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We will see how the polls go. And of course, we're looking forward to your passion as well that impacts so many people on Social Security. Congressman John B. Larson, thank you for stopping by this morning.
Thank you so much, Laura. Enjoyed the conversation. Look forward to more.
I hope so. Thank you.